The rustle of newsprint, Saturday morning pocket money, the corner shop comic rack. If you remember that weekly ritual, you lived through something special, the golden age of British comics, when stories arrived at your doorstep every week without fail. But here's the shocking truth. Most of those comics have completely vanished. Comics that sold hundreds of thousands of copies, that defined British childhoods, forgotten as if they never existed. Today, we're remembering 10 beloved 1970s British comics that ruled the newsstands, then disappeared without a trace. Stay till the end. One of these might just be the comic that shaped your entire childhood. Jackie wasn't just a magazine, it was a rite of passage. Every Thursday, teenage girls across Britain would clutch their pocket money and make the pilgrimage to the newsagent, hearts racing with anticipation. What would this week bring? Which pop star would grace the cover? What earth-shattering problem would Cathy and Claire solve in their advice column? Launched in 1964, Jackie reached its absolute peak in the mid-1970s, selling over 600,000 copies a week. But this wasn't just about numbers, this was about belonging. Jackie was your secret handbook to growing up, your bridge between childhood and the mysterious world of teenagers. The glossy pages felt grown up in your hands, each issue a treasure trove of fashion tips, pop star interviews, and those deliciously dramatic photo love stories that made your heart skip. Picture this: Saturday afternoon, sprawled across your bedroom floor with your best friend, carefully cutting out the free poster of David Cassidy or Mark Bolan. The rustle of those thin, precious pages, the smell of cheap perfume samples, the hushed conversations about Cathy and Claire's advice on first kisses and difficult parents. Jackie didn't just tell you about teenage life, it gave you permission to dream about it. But perhaps most importantly, Jackie created a shared language. Monday mornings at school were filled with whispered conversations. Did you read Jackie this week? It was your secret society, your guide to navigating the treacherous waters of adolescence when nobody else seemed to understand. Then, almost without warning, it was gone. By the 1990s, teenage culture had shifted. Jackie couldn't compete with music videos, teen TV shows, and a generation that found their answers online instead of in problem pages. The weekly ritual that had defined British girlhood for 3 decades simply ended. Action was the comic that parents feared and boys craved. Launched by IPC in 1976, it lasted just 89 explosive weeks. But what a shockwave it sent through British culture. This wasn't your typical adventure comic. Action was raw, violent, and unapologetically brutal. The cover art alone could stop you dead in your tracks at the newsstand. Helicopters crashing in flames, soldiers bleeding in trenches, cars exploding in spectacular detail. Inside, stories like Hook Jaw featured a great white shark literally tearing people apart, while Dredger showed urban violence with a gritty realism that had never been seen in children's comics before. Picture the thrill of smuggling action past disapproving parents, the guilty pleasure of reading it under your duvet with a torch, heart-pounding as Hook Jaw claimed another victim. This was forbidden fruit in comic form, dangerous, exciting, and absolutely magnetic to boys who were tired of sanitized adventure stories. But action wasn't just shock for shock's sake. Hidden beneath the blood and explosions were sophisticated stories about war, corruption, and moral complexity. Charlie's War didn't glorify battle. It showed the horror of the trenches with unflinching honesty. For the first time, a comic was treating its young readers like they could handle real emotions, real consequences. The controversy was swift and devastating. Parent groups were outraged. Newspapers ran campaigns against it. Questions were asked in Parliament. By 1977, moral panic had effectively killed Action despite its massive popularity with readers. Action vanished, but its influence echoed through British comics forever. It proved that young readers were hungry for stories that didn't talk down to them, even if the adult world wasn't ready to let them have it. The Beezer was pure childhood joy, wrapped in newsprint. Every Saturday morning from 1956 to 1993, this D.C. Thompson treasure delivered belly laughs and innocent mischief straight to your doorstep. But it was in the 1970s that the Beezer truly captured the heart of British childhood. Picture the ritual. Saturday morning, still in your pajamas, unfolding those bright, colorful pages to meet your weekly friends. Colonel Blink the short-sighted gink, stumbling through his military mishaps. The numbskulls, those tiny people living inside someone's head, controlling every sneeze and thought. Baby Crockett, the infant frontiersman causing chaos in the Wild West. These weren't just characters, they were part of your family. The artwork was pure magic, bold, cartoonish, bursting with energy that seemed to leap off the page. You could almost hear the bonk and crash sound effects echoing around your bedroom. The Beezer had a special talent for slapstick, every pratfall perfectly timed, every mishap gloriously absurd. It was comedy that worked on the playground as much as it did at home. But here's what made the Beezer special. It understood childhood completely. Every joke, every adventure, every ridiculous situation felt like it was written by someone who remembered exactly what it was like to be 8 years old. The humor was never cruel, never cynical, just pure, infectious fun that you'd share with your mates on Monday morning. Then television happened. Cartoons moved from page to screen, bringing color, movement, and sound that print couldn't match. The weekly comic ritual slowly faded as children turned to Saturday morning TV instead. The Beezer lasted longer than most, clinging on until 1993. But by then, it was already a relic of simpler times. Tammy was where nightmares lived. Launched in 1971, this girl's weekly comic dared to go where others wouldn't, into the dark corners of the imagination where fear and fascination collided. While other girls' comics offered romance and fashion, Tammy served up psychological horror with a distinctly British twist. Picture those haunting black and white illustrations that seemed to stare right through you. Slaves of war orphan farm, girls trapped in a nightmarish institution. The cult of the cat, ancient Egyptian curses stalking modern schoolgirls. No tears for Molly, a girl literally unable to cry, trapped in her own emotional prison. These weren't just stories, they were fever dreams that lingered long after you'd closed the comic. The artwork was deliberately unsettling. Shadowy faces, twisted expressions, eyes that followed you across the page. You'd read Tammy with a delicious mixture of terror and excitement, knowing that this week's cliffhanger would haunt your dreams. Yet somehow you couldn't wait for next Thursday's issue. But beneath the supernatural scares, Tammy understood something profound about girlhood. Growing up isn't just about pretty dresses and first crushes, it's about facing real fears, real darkness, real complexity. Tammy's heroines weren't helpless victims. They were survivors, fighters, girls who faced impossible odds with courage and determination. Monday mornings at school were electric with Tammy talk. Did you read about the ghost in the boarding school? Whispered conversations in the playground, shared shivers, the delicious thrill of being genuinely frightened by something designed just for you. By the 1980s, Tammy had been absorbed into other titles, its dark magic diluted and eventually lost. The world had apparently decided that girls didn't need their nightmares served up weekly anymore. Battle Picture Weekly. Battle Picture Weekly wasn't just a war comic. It was a masterclass in storytelling that happened to be set in trenches, jungles, and battlefields. Launched in 1975, Battle redefined what British comics could achieve, delivering gritty realism wrapped in compelling human drama. This was war comics for a generation that had grown up with television news from Vietnam. Battle didn't glorify conflict, it showed its true face. Mud-caked soldiers, the weight of impossible decisions, the thin line between heroism and survival. The artwork was revolutionary, detailed, cinematic, unflinchingly honest about the cost of warfare. Charlie's War became the crown jewel, following young Charlie Bourne through the horrors of World War I. Pat Mills and Joe Colquhoun created something extraordinary, a comic that treated its young readers with complete respect, never talking down, never sanitizing the brutal reality of the trenches. You could almost smell the cordite, feel the cold bite of a French winter, hear the whistle of incoming shells. But battle offered more than just historical warfare. Johnny Red soared through aerial dogfights over the Russian front. D-Day Dawson stormed the beaches of Normandy. The Rat Pack fought dirty urban warfare against impossible odds. Each story was meticulously researched, historically accurate, yet utterly gripping. Monday mornings meant heated playground discussions about tactics, heroism, and the moral complexity of war. Battle didn't just entertain, it educated, challenged, and respected its readers' intelligence. By the early 1980s, attitudes toward war stories had shifted. Parents and educators grew uncomfortable with military themes, even thoughtful ones. Battle gradually lost its edge, then its audience, finally merging with other titles until its unique voice was silenced forever. Whoopee was childhood distilled into pure, concentrated joy. From 1974 to 1985, this IPC comedy comic delivered belly laughs and playground gold every single week. The exclamation mark wasn't just punctuation, it was a promise that inside these pages anything could happen, and probably would. Picture Saturday morning chaos spilling across your bedroom floor. Frankie Stein, the friendly monster created by a mad professor, bumbling through everyday situations with hilarious results. Scream In, where ghosts and ghouls ran a supernatural hotel that was anything but scary. Worldwide Weirdies, featuring the most wonderfully ridiculous characters from across the globe, each more bizarre than the last. The artwork was pure visual comedy, exaggerated expressions, perfect comic timing frozen in ink and color. You could hear the splat and bowing echoing off the pages. Every panel was crafted for maximum giggles, every speech bubble perfectly timed for the punchline. Whoopee understood that children's humor wasn't a watered-down version of adult comedy. It was something entirely different, entirely brilliant. But here's what made Whoopee special. It was genuinely funny, not just silly or absurd, but cleverly written comedy that worked on multiple levels. The writers respected their young audience enough to craft proper jokes, not just pratfalls and slapstick. Monday mornings were filled with kids retelling their favorite strips, complete with voices and gestures. Then, television comedy began to dominate children's entertainment. Why read jokes when you could watch them in full color with sound effects and music? Saturday morning TV shows offered immediate gratification that weekly comics couldn't match. Whoopee held on longer than most, but by 1985, the laughter had finally faded. The playground joke-swapping culture it had nurtured was becoming a memory. Misty was where the supernatural crept into British girlhood. Launched in 1978, this eerie weekly dared to serve up genuine horror to teenage girls, wrapped in atmospheric artwork that could chill you to the bone. While other girls' comics offered romance and friendship, Misty delivered nightmares you actually wanted to have. The very cover was a work of art, that haunting illustration of a mysterious girl with flowing hair, surrounded by gothic imagery that promised dark delights inside. You'd spot Misty on the newsstand from across the shop, its distinctive artwork calling to you like a siren song. This wasn't just another comic, this was a gateway to the unknown. Inside, stories unfolded with cinematic atmosphere. Moonchild followed a girl with mysterious powers she couldn't control. The Four Faces of Eve explored identity and possession with psychological depth that was genuinely unsettling. Wolfbane brought werewolf horror to suburban Britain. The black and white artwork was deliberately moody. Shadowy figures, haunting close-ups, panels that seemed to breathe with malevolent life. But Misty understood something crucial about teenage girls. They were ready for complexity, for stories that didn't patronize or simplify. These weren't simple ghost stories. They were explorations of power, identity, and the dark side of growing up. The heroines faced real terror, but found strength within themselves, often discovering they were more powerful than the forces trying to destroy them. Monday mornings buzzed with whispered conversations about the previous week's cliffhanger. Did you see what happened to Sarah in Moonchild? The shared shiver of delicious fear, the bonding over stories that made your skin crawl. Misty lasted just 2 years. Perhaps it was too niche, too dark for mainstream success. The publishing world decided that teenage girls wanted safer fare, gentler dreams. Ginty was revolution disguised as entertainment. From 1974 to 1981, this girls' weekly comic delivered something unprecedented. Stories where girls weren't just pretty faces waiting to be rescued, but complex protagonists fighting impossible odds with courage and determination. Each Thursday, Ginty arrived with tales that gripped you from the first panel. The Jinx from Saint. Jonas, a girl whose very presence brought disaster to everyone around her, struggling with guilt and isolation. Fran of the Floods, a young woman becoming a leader in a post-apocalyptic world where traditional gender roles meant nothing. The Human Zoo, children trapped in a nightmarish experiment fighting for their freedom. The artwork was emotionally charged, capturing every nuance of fear, determination, and triumph. You could see the steel in these characters' eyes, feel their resolve burning through the page. These weren't passive victims. They were fighters, survivors, girls who refused to accept defeat even when the world seemed stacked against them. What made Ginty extraordinary was its respect for its readers' intelligence. The stories tackled complex themes: social injustice, environmental disaster, psychological manipulation, without ever talking down to its young audience. Every cliffhanger left you desperate for resolution. Every story arc built to genuine emotional crescendos that could bring tears to your eyes. Monday morning playground conversations were intense affairs. Did you see what happened to Fran? These weren't just entertainment. They were shared experiences that shaped how young girls saw their own potential. Ginty showed them they could be heroes in their own stories. By 1981, market forces had taken over. Ginty was merged into other publications, its unique voice gradually diluted until it disappeared entirely. The comic industry had apparently decided that empowering stories for girls weren't commercially viable. Thunder burst onto the scene in 1970 like a lightning strike, blazing bright and burning out fast. IPC's ambitious attempt at capturing the action comic market lasted just 22 explosive weeks, but what a ride it was while it lasted. This was Adventure Comics, with the volume turned up to 11. Black Max, a World War I German pilot with a squadron of giant bats as his air force. The Steel Commando, a robot soldier fighting through World War II with mechanical precision and surprising humanity. Adam Eterno, an immortal warrior cursed to live forever, fighting through different time periods with nothing but his bare hands and indestructible will. The artwork was spectacular, full-page spreads that looked like movie posters, action sequences that practically moved on the page. Thunder understood that boys wanted spectacle, wanted stories so outrageous they'd make your jaw drop. These weren't subtle tales. They were pure adrenaline in comic form, designed to leave you breathless and desperate for more. Picture the playground on Monday morning. Boys huddled together, voices hushed with excitement. Did you see Black Max's bats attack the squadron? Thunder created a shared mythology, a common language of impossible adventures that bonded its readers together. Every issue promised something you'd never seen before, some new twist that would blow your mind. But Thunder's ambition was also its downfall. The stories were expensive to produce, the artwork costly, the concepts perhaps too wild for mainstream success. Within months, falling sales forced IPC to merge Thunder with the more established Lion comic, where its unique voice was gradually absorbed and lost. Thunder proved that sometimes the brightest flames burn shortest. But for those 22 weeks, it showed what comics could achieve when imagination ran completely wild. TV comic was the perfect bridge between your two favorite worlds, the telly and the comic rack. From 1951 to 1984, this unique weekly brought beloved television characters into your hands, transforming screen heroes into page-turning adventures you could read again and again. Saturday mornings meant double the excitement. First, your favorite shows on the box, then their comic adventures waiting on your bedside table. Doctor Who faced new monsters in full-color spreads that captured all the excitement of the TV series. The Magic Roundabout's psychedelic adventures translated beautifully to print, Dougal and friends embarking on surreal journeys that were somehow even more magical on paper. Captain Scarlet battled the Mysterons across lavishly illustrated panels that rivaled anything you'd see on screen. The genius of TV comic was in the translation. How do you capture the essence of moving pictures in static panels? The artist mastered this alchemy, creating dynamic layouts that practically moved before your eyes. Sound effects exploded across pages. Exterminate! Mysteron! Thunderbirds a go! You could hear the voices, imagine the music, feel the excitement building with every turn of the page. But TV comic offered something television couldn't: permanence. You could revisit your favorite adventures whenever you wanted, pore over artwork that revealed new details with each reading, share issues with friends who'd missed last week's episode. These comics became treasured possessions, bridges between fleeting TV moments and lasting childhood memories. By the 1980s, video recorders and repeat broadcasts made TV comics' role less essential. Why read about yesterday's Doctor Who when you could tape it and watch it again? The unique niche that TV comic had carved out was slowly being filled by technology. In 1984, TV comic quietly disappeared, taking with it a unique form of storytelling that had bridged screen and page for over 3 decades. If this journey through forgotten comics stirred memories you thought were lost forever, you're not alone. Maybe you remember rushing to buy Jackie every Thursday, or hiding action under your mattress, or sharing Beezer jokes with your mates. Drop a comment below and tell us which of these vanished comics shaped your childhood. We'd love to hear your stories. And if you enjoyed this trip back to simpler times when stories arrived weekly in your hands, consider subscribing for more forgotten treasures from Britain's past.